begging them to increase property taxes and to cause them to pay more taxes. The majority of candidates in the election, and I can only take it from that, voted for candidates like me who are committed to keeping property taxes low. And certainly my own experience as I go around the city day after day, event after event, crowd after crowd, is I do not have people coming up to me and begging to see property taxes increased. In fact, quite to the contrary. I have people saying that they want us to show the discipline of keeping property taxes low. And part of how you do that is how you use property taxes. Property taxes are a predictable, reliable, and fair way to raise money for day-to-day services, whether it be fire or policing or parks and recreation programs, libraries, and this kind of thing. But they are not the right tool to use for major capital projects. To build the projects that are worth $33 billion, which is the total of the unfunded transit and infrastructure projects that have piled up over decades of inaction, we would need a massive increase in our property taxes year after year. And that is something I'm simply not prepared to do. I said I wouldn't do it, and I won't do it because it's not right. We're talking near double-digit increases in property taxes, which would cost the Bennetts and thousands of other families across the city hundreds of extra dollars every year. That is not the right way to pay for these projects that we have put on the back burner for decades, and it is not necessary to charge people through their property taxes for those investments. There is a way to build the transit we need and to protect the services we depend on while keeping Toronto more affordable for the hard-working residents. Road tolls and simple tax reforms like the hotel tax and ending the vacant commercial and industrial property tax rebate will in total raise us hundreds of millions of dollars each year. And those changes are fair. They reduce the impact on Toronto residents by asking everyone who visits our city or who benefits from its services to pay their fair share. It places more of a focus, as I think we should be doing, on people who use services being the ones who pay for them. 40% of the people who use the Don Valley Parkway and the Gardiner do not pay any taxes in Toronto. They live in the 905 and use those highways every day. And yet Toronto taxpayers end up footing the entire bill for those highways, which going forward the next couple of decades will be in the billions of dollars to keep those highways up. That is just not fair or appropriate. But beyond fairness, those very same reasonable tolls will give us the money to build more transit and fix traffic for those who are living in the City of Toronto and for those who don't live in the City of Toronto. Everybody in this region knows how much work we have to do to fix traffic, and a big part of that, the most important part of that, is building transit. The tolls will also help us to manage congestion better, as they have elsewhere in the world, and encourage greater use of public transit. These measures, I believe, are the best way to address the $33 billion worth of projects that we need to build. We simply can't go on not building the transit, not fixing the traffic, and not owning up to the fact that building transit and fixing traffic are not free. But that fix cannot and must not and should not be paid for with massive property tax increases. That is the kind of thing I'm going to fight against, because it is not the right way to fund those things, and it is not consistent with having seniors and young families and other people remain in their homes and do so on an affordable basis. People say that our property taxes are lower than other municipalities. I think any fair examination of the total cost of living in Toronto versus other cities in the GTA will certainly show Torontonians are paying their fair share. But what we have done is we have said to people like the Bennetts, and they are responding in a positive way, that if you can divert more waste and can put out less garbage, then you can actually pay less for your garbage bin. So they have a family of 6 in this house that makes do each and every year with a small garbage bin, and they're paying less as a result of that. But that is a change in behavior that is good for the environment and good for this family. I think that if you look at the cost of living in Toronto that I talked about, it doesn't even take into account the massive amounts that Toronto contributes to the coffers of the federal and provincial governments. Massive amounts of money Torontonians pay, and all the other taxes that go to those other governments. And I will say that there have been some recent trends in the direction of addressing that imbalance and giving some things back to Toronto to invest in transit and so on the part of the federal government in particular, but still there are massive amounts paid by Torontonians to those governments. And so I am here today to say that when the budget is presented tomorrow, it will contain, and when the budget goes forward, more importantly to City Council after the work of the Budget Committee, which begins tomorrow, I can tell you that it will contain a recommendation to the City Council, consistent with the prior years, that property taxes not increase by more than the rate of inflation, less if at all possible. But I am telling you that commitment will be met because it's important for it to be met, both as a matter of being consistent, but also as a matter of making sure that families can continue to be in their homes, seniors can continue to be in their homes, young families can continue to be in their homes. Property tax increases for 2017 will be recommended to City Council at or below the rate of inflation. I think it's time to get building. It's time to be honest about the best way in which we can do that, and that is what I'm determined to do. Your questions.
Mayor Tory, how do you think we can keep it this window for the next few years as long as your mayor not raising property taxes beyond inflation, despite the calls from lots of councillors that it's desperately needed?
I have answered the need that the city does have in order to proceed with building transit and fixing traffic in particular by suggesting road tolls. And I think in previous councils they had the raw courage that it took to vote down every possible way of raising money. Every one. There wasn't one that they said yes to. I'm saying yes on a recommendation to City Council, which will be considered this month, to the road tolls, because I think that while nobody will have a parade in my honor for bringing them in, at the same time I think if they'll respect the fact that I'm being honest, they'll respect the fact we're going to get on with building transit and fixing traffic where previous councils and previous mayors have just kicked it down the road. So I would say that that's going to help us a lot with our finances, and we can keep property taxes low at the same time.
Sir, does the city manager agree with your plan to property taxes?
The city manager has said to people that the property tax is one of the tools we presently have that obviously allows us to raise more money. And he has talked about that before, and indeed the commentary coming with his budget tomorrow will talk about it again. But he also has a council direction in which it was indicated to the staff that we were not going to have a property tax increase above the rate of inflation for this year. And so I think you'll see most of his calculations tomorrow will be based on that. And I can certainly assure you that once the Budget Committee is done with their work, that what will go forward to City Council is a budget at my request that will not increase property taxes above the rate of inflation. I think that's important for people to know that and for people to count on that. And at the same time, I have been honest enough to put forward other measures that will allow us to get on with not trying to fool people into thinking we might one day build transit and fix traffic. We're actually going to do it, and we've explained to them how we propose to pay for it. Well, the good news is that the timing of most of the transit projects and even things like fixing the Gardiner Expressway and so on are things that have most of the expenditure of money actually happening several years out. We're still, as you know, in the planning stages of some of these transit projects like Smart Track, like the Relief Line. So a lot of the big expenditure comes when you're actually building them. And that building is going to start soon. But we also have a plan already in place, a capital budget that's a 10-year plan, and it has a lot of money in it for those projects already. So what we're looking to do now is to raise the extra money needed to fund all the projects that previous city councils and previous mayors have put on the list and said, yeah, we're going to do it, but with no means of paying for it. We're now starting to answer that question of saying, here's how we're going to pay for it so we can actually build it. So I would say to you that when you see all the finances laid out tomorrow, you will see that there is a substantial budget, capital budget every year to continue building things in the city, but nothing that really addressed the $33 billion in other projects, and we're going to begin to address that with the road tolls and the other funds that go to the infrastructure fund we're creating. The budget will be presented tomorrow with an operating shortfall that has to be fixed by the Budget Committee between now and the time it gets presented to Council. So that's the work they have to do. I will tell you that the shortfall started at an amount that was in over $700 million and has been now worked down to a more modest level. But there's still some work for the Budget Committee to do in terms of considering either expenditure changes or revenue changes that make up that amount, because as you know, we are obligated, as I'm happy we are, to present a balanced budget to the